Good morning and welcome to my new channel, Under the Lens. My name is Jane, and as I mentioned, this is a brand new channel, and hopefully it will become your go-to channel for an in-depth look at Canadian legislation and discerning political fact versus fiction. Today, we're peeling back the layers on recent laws, starting with a suite of regulations aimed at online speech, surveillance, and free expression. These changes have civil liberty groups rightly sounding the alarm, and we're here to break down what it means for you. Let's begin with Bill C-9, commonly referred to as the Combating Hate Act. On the surface, this bill targets hate speech and creates new offenses for intimidation near religious places and senior residences, which you would think is a good thing, right? Well, the problem is there is an already existing law in place. Before Bill C-9, the Canadian Criminal Code already had Section 176, which deals with disturbing religious worship and obstructing officiants. In addition, the Canadian Criminal Code contains several provisions against hate. These include Sections 318, which prohibits advocating or promoting genocide, and Section 319, which criminalizes the public incitement of hatred and the willful promotion of hatred against identifiable groups. There are also provisions regarding hate-motivated mischief under Sections 430, so why not actually use it instead of creating more laws overlapping? Well, your guess is as good as mine. False sense of security to ensure people feel safe, maybe? Now, here's where it is even more concerning. Critics worry it lowers legal standards and threatens free speech. Bill C-9, the Combating Hate Act, it doesn't just increase penalties for hate speech. It also repeals the good faith religious opinion defense. This means statements made from religious texts could potentially be prosecuted, raising fears among the faith groups that their traditional teachings could be criminalized when government bodies are granted the power to define hate speech. The risk is that the criteria can be applied subjectively, shifting based on political climates or interpretations. That's not a good thing. This creates an environment where individuals hesitate to express themselves freely, fearing the legitimate opinions could be legally penalized. The ultimate consequence of this bill is the gradual erosion of open discourse, as the potential for censorship leads to self-censorship, silencing important conversations and narrowing the scope of public debate. You ever heard of the term of politically correct? Well, this kind of falls in that category. Moving on to Bill C-22, also known as the Lawful Access Act. This legislation would grant sweeping powers to the government to compel companies to assist with surveillance, including building technical capabilities to access private communications. It facilitates easier access to personal digital information by law enforcement by allowing them to request subscriber data directly from telecom providers, often without warrant, which civil liberties advocates see as a severe threat to privacy. So what does that mean for you? Imagine you're using your phone's navigation to look for directions or searching the web for information. Under this legislation, law enforcement could potentially request those specific details, like your location history or search terms, directly from your phone company without first securing a warrant, meaning your private activities could be monitored at any time with less oversight. Next, we have Bill C-63, otherwise known as the Online Harms Act, which places significant obligations on social media companies to reduce exposure to harmful content, and also defines hatred in the criminal code. On the surface, that doesn't sound too bad, huh? Well, hold on to your horses. Here's the problem. Bill C-63 establishes a powerful digital safety commission, which will be tasked to monitor and regulate online hate speech, with significantly higher penalties for hate speech offenses, leading to fears of government overreach. Essentially, Bill C-63 would place major responsibilities on social media companies to actively reduce harmful content on their platforms. Still not convinced it's a bad thing? Well, Aside from being more censorship, the Digital Safety Commission would have the power to define and penalize hate speech offenses outside the traditional court system, leading to government overreach, which negatively impact freedom of speech and expression. For example, if someone posted something deemed harmful by the commission would become judge, jury, and executioner and could impose significant penalties without going through a judge or a jury. That is frightening. Do you notice the theme here and intentional overlap of each piece of legislation? I continue. On to Bill C-216, the Protection of Minors in the Digital Age Act. This bill proposes specific measures to safeguard children online by introducing a duty of care for platforms, often overlapping with the broader Online Harms Act. This act imposes strict new obligations on the Internet service providers and online platforms to protect minors. But critics argue this could result in broad overreach censorship of legal content. For example, imagine a Canadian posting a detailed discussion on social media about sexual health education or mental health resources. Well, to avoid stiff penalties for non-compliance, the platform might just use automatic filters that are overly sensitive, resulting in content being incorrectly flagged and removed, even though it's not harmful and perfectly legal and could actually be beneficial to the public. This kind of broad censorship can stifle important public discussions and limit access to important information. In addition, and perhaps maybe the most concerning, is that the intersection of digital regulation and criminal responsibility is a key point of concern for legislations like Bill C-216, which could potentially broaden the scope of how online speech is interpreted, creating new pathways for individuals to face criminal liability for posts that are deemed to violate these stringent online safety regulations. This introduces a significant risk that everyday conversations, opinions, or shared information could be criminalized under broadly defined offenses. Finally, Bill C-34 introduces a ban on social media for minors under the age of 16, which is seen by many as a significant limitation on their freedom of expression and access to information. This bill is essentially an overlap, again, of Bill 216, Bill C-34, which plans to establish a digital safety commission to enforce safety requirements on major platforms and AI chatbots, but again, raises concern about government oversight over public discourse. So in summary, when you combine all of the sweet legislation that we just talked about with the increasing lack of transparency and accountability, such as turning cameras off during committee meetings, allowing only Liberal MPs to raise motion during some of the committee meetings, or abruptly adjourning meetings, essentially stopping any accountability, giving extensive powers to an unelected, unjudicial board to decide what is or isn't hate speech, what is or isn't misinformation, or what is or isn't an acceptable opinion is very concerning, to say the least. This collective impact signals the active erosion of democracy and blatant disregard for the parliamentary system and nullifying government oversight, all the while disregarding the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, not to mention our judiciary. These are setting a dangerous precedent for government intrusion in the daily lives and private conversations on and offline of Canadian citizens, and potentially alters the fundamental nature of freedom of expression and free speech in Canada for the next generations to come, all with the potential of criminal prosecution without your day in court. Let that last statement sink in. Potential criminal prosecution without your day in court. In the end, regardless what side of the aisle you're on, this should concern everyone, or at the very least, open dialogue. I hope this has given you some insight and something to think on. If you like this content, please like, subscribe, and comment below, and let me know what you would like us to focus on in our next Under the Lens content. Have a great day.